Okay, picture this for a second. You're flying a reconnaissance mission right over a stretch of the Iranian coastline. You look down from 30,000 feet, and honestly, it looks like absolutely nothing. Just rugged, empty rock dropping straight into the Persian Gulf. There are no buildings, no ports, no obvious military footprint at all. But then, literally out of nowhere, a massive door built right into the side of a mountain slides open and outpours a dozen incredibly fast small boats heading straight for the major shipping lanes. And they're gone before anyone watching could even radio a warning. It sounds completely made up, like something out of a spy movie, right? But this is actually a very real, documented military tactic.
So it begs the question, how on earth do you hide an entire navy? Well, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, they've spent nearly 2 decades obsessing over that exact question. They've been incredibly busy carving these massive, fortified tunnel and cave complexes straight into solid mountain rock and strategic islands. Take an island like Farwar, for instance. It's widely reported to be the nerve center for Iran's naval special forces. They've essentially built working piers right inside these deep, excavated mountain caves. That means their fast attack boats can be fully moored, sheltered from airstrikes, and then launched into the open water in a matter of minutes.
To make sense of this whole conflict, in this explainer we're going to cover 5 key areas. Number 1, the invisible coastal hideouts. Number 2, fact-checking recent strikes. Number 3, the anatomy of underground bases. Number 4, swarms, mines, and blockades. And finally, number 5, a grinding war of attrition. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the invisible coastal hideouts. The logic behind a vanishing fleet. Think about a conventional warship for a second, your standard frigate or destroyer. It is a massive target. You can easily spot it on satellite imagery, you can track it on radar 24/7, and once a conflict actually breaks out, it's pretty much a sitting duck. In fact, over 155 conventional Iranian naval assets were quickly destroyed or heavily damaged very early in this conflict. But contrast that giant target with the IRGC's asymmetric solution, a 20-foot fast attack boat. When you tuck a boat that tiny under a carved-out rock overhang, it's practically invisible from orbit. It's a wildly unpredictable threat because, well, you just never know what its intentions are until it's already moving at top speed. Moving on to Section 2, fact-checking recent strikes, separating internet rumors from confirmed CENTCOM data. Look at how this campaign actually evolved, because the timeline is super important here. It all kicked off on February 28th with some massive, devastating initial strikes by the US and Israel. Those strikes took out senior commanders and really hammered the conventional naval ports. Then, by April 13th, the US ramped things up by imposing a formal naval blockade on Iranian ports. Fast forward to mid-July, and CENTCOM launches this highly targeted, intense 90-minute operation. This time they focus specifically on coastal defense systems and cruise missile storage around key locations like Kesh and Bandar Abbas. Now, here is where we really need to clear the air and separate fact from fiction. You've probably seen the internet speculation going around, with people confidently claiming the US finally cracked open and completely destroyed those deep underground tunnel networks. But if we look at the confirmed CENTCOM data, it tells a very different story. Yes, the strikes successfully hit surrounding coastal defense systems, radar facilities, and missile storage. But, and this is a big but, there is zero confirmed breach of the actual hardened cave pens themselves. Claiming those mountain bunkers have been definitively cracked open is, at least right now, just unverified speculation. And to give you a sense of just how incredibly resilient this infrastructure actually is, according to reports drawing on that CENTCOM data, as of early April, even after taking all those massive losses to their conventional fleet, over 60% of Iran's remaining high-speed attack boats were still believed to be sitting safely sheltered inside these underground coastal facilities. Which brings us to Section 3, Anatomy of Underground Bases, Engineering an Invulnerable Mountain Fortress. You have to realize, these are not your standard run-of-the-mill concrete military bunkers. Their entire construction philosophy exploits naturally dense rock. We're talking about facilities buried under up to 500 meters of solid granite. That's essentially natural armor. Plus, they feature multiple redundant entrances and exits, meaning if you somehow manage to blow up and seal one door, they just keep operating through another one. Inside, they function almost like hidden self-contained cities, complete with automated rail systems moving things between storage and assembly areas. To even put a scratch on a facility like this, an attacking force has to rely on highly specialized penetrator munitions, like the massive GBU-57 bunker buster. But hey, nothing is completely flawless, right? Analysts who study similar Iranian underground missile cities have pointed out a pretty major potential flaw in the internal layout. Apparently, munitions are often stored in open, continuous corridors, without any separating blast doors. This means if one of those specialized bunker busters actually manages to break inside, it risks triggering a massive, cascading secondary explosion. It's basically a huge domino effect waiting to happen, allowing damage to spread way beyond the initial strike zone. Let's shift gears to Section 4, Swarms, Mines, and Blockades, the asymmetric warfare triad and economic squeeze. Iran's whole layered defense philosophy basically boils down to three distinct pillars. First up is swarming. This is where they use dozens of those 20-foot fast boats to just completely overwhelm a larger ship's defenses with sheer volume and speed. Second is area denial, relying heavily on naval mines. Experts estimate a staggering 80% of Iran's mine-laying capacity survived those early airstrikes, leaving dormant, long-term hazards in the water that require incredibly slow and vulnerable sweeping operations. And finally, unpredictability. They use submarines like their domestically produced Fateh and Khadir classes. Now, they aren't going toe-to-toe with modern nuclear subs, not at all, but they add a very dangerous underwater variable in the shallow, confined waters of the Gulf. To counter this enduring, highly layered threat, the U.S. didn't just use bombs. They launched a parallel economic campaign. After those ceasefire talks collapsed, the formal naval blockade was imposed, and the impact was massive. By May 1st alone, the Pentagon estimated this blockade had cost Iran a mind-blowing $4.8 billion in lost oil revenue. And that financial bleeding hasn't stopped. Today, the estimated daily cost of that reinstated blockade sits at roughly $500 million. So what we're seeing is a massive economic chokehold running completely in parallel with the kinetic military strikes we've been talking about. But as punishing as that sounds, data from Lloyd's List shows us that the blockade isn't completely airtight. CENTCOM has intercepted 85 vessels and actually seized 3 of them outright. However, despite all that pressure, at least 26 vessels still managed to successfully slip through and bypass enforcement entirely. Finally, let's look at Section 5, a grinding war of attrition, the human cost, diplomacy, and the long endgame. We really can't discuss this without acknowledging the very real human cost of this conflict. Because these coastal hideouts aren't sitting out in some isolated empty desert. They are heavily woven directly into ordinary civilian coastal infrastructure. Health Ministry reports show that over 30 civilians have been killed and more than 260 injured in the recent renewed strikes. Just to give you an example, a strike near Fair Island tragically killed a telecommunications maintenance worker and injured his colleagues. These were people who had absolutely nothing to do with military operations. But remember, the military action is really only half of the equation here. There's a whole parallel diplomatic track quietly operating in the background. After the Islamabad ceasefire talks fell apart back in April, the region has been desperately looking for off-ramps. Recently, Iran's foreign minister traveled to Doha for a Qatari ceremony, and regional analysts strongly suggest this provided a perfect setup for informal back channels and quiet negotiations. This is classic for these types of conflicts, military pressure and diplomacy operating at the exact same time. There's a quote from analysts at the Jamestown Foundation that brutally hits the nail on the head regarding everything we've covered today. They pointed out that sinking those big, prestigious, conventional warships in the opening weeks barely dented Iran's actual capability to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz. The true disruptive power was never the big ships, it always lay with that cheap, highly dispersed, hidden boat network. So what is the ultimate strategic reality here? Well, we are clearly not witnessing a fast, clean, or decisive war. Instead, we're watching a slow, messy, heavily resource-intensive campaign of sustained attrition. It's directed against deeply entrenched, ideologically motivated infrastructure. This is all about grinding incremental pressure, rather than some Hollywood-style single dramatic knockout blow. I want to leave you with this thought. As this incredibly high-stakes cat-and-mouse dynamic continues, with really no immediate end in sight, who eventually blinks first? Can a relatively low-tech, highly dispersed, underground defense system realistically hold out indefinitely against a massive modern air campaign? Or is it literally just a matter of time before sheer attrition finally wins out? It's an absolutely fascinating question, and one we'll definitely be watching closely.